Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, welcome. So in this video, we are going to look at the concept of memory. A memory is a memory is the mental capacity to store, retain, and retrieve information. So, like for example, when you are in class and you receive lecture, your ability or the capacity of your brain to to store, to retain, and retrieve the information when needed is what you call a memory. So some people have good memory, while some people have bad memory. So this memory, it plays a crucial role in our daily lives. And it's also very important in influencing decision making and learning. Like for example, if you have a very good memory, whenever you are going to talk, or whenever you're going to take a decision, you use the memory to look at what you have in your brain, the current situation, and then you decide. And it's also very important in learning. That is why we are different because we have different memory. That is why our learning differ from one another. That is why understanding the memory can help understand cognitive abilities. If you understand what memory is, you will be able to understand your cognitive abilities and your learning strategies. So if you have a good understanding of what memory is, you can enhance your cognitive abilities. You can also improve your learning strategies. So from this video, we are going to look at how, with the knowledge of the memory, how you can actually improve your learning strategy, how you can also enhance cognitive functions. Some people are dull because they prefer or they want to be dull. Yeah. So now, what are the types of memory? Let's look at the different types of memory. The memory is typically categorized into three main types. We have sensory, we have short, and we have long term. Sensory memory hold fleeting impressions of sensory information for a very brief period. Fleeting impression, when we say fleeting impressions of sensory information, it means so the fleeting impressions of sensory information for a very brief period of time, it means that it's actually a type of memory that just show an expression for a short duration of time. And this information is actually a sensory information. So it's just a memory that's hold a short, a short duration impressions of sensory information. So that is what we call a sensory information, a sensory memory. So it's a types of memory that is associated with the sensory information for a brief period of time. It can be between just 2 to 3 seconds. Then the long-term memory can store information for extended durations ranging from hours to a lifetime. And very interestingly, ladies and gentlemen, you should understand that for the sensory information, sorry, for the sensory memory, it is the first stage of actions. So let's look at it. The sensory memory is the initial stage of memory processing. So the initial stage of memory processing is started with sensory memory, capturing raw data the senses, from the senses, like for example, sense organs. So it captured the raw data. So this is the sensory inputs. When the sensory information or when the sensory data is getting into the sensory information. so it can be forgotten. You can easily forget it. This sensory memory it includes iconic memory for visual stimulus and an echoic memory for auditory stimuli. So iconic memory, it means the sensory nerve, the sensory memory is associated with the stimulus that are associated with seeing and also hearing. So the sensory memory lasts only for a few seconds, making it essential for immediate perception. So that is what I want us to understand. In the case of sensory memory, it is associated with sensory information or sensory activities like seeing and talk. So in the case of short-term memory, a short-term memory retains information for a limited time, usually around 20 to 30 seconds. That is how it retains information. And it has a limited capacity, often described by Miller's law as being able to hold 7 plus or minus 2 items. So in the case of the short-term memory, it can only hold the items of plus or minus 7 plus or minus 2. That it can hold items like 9, it can hold like 8, it can hold 7, it can hold 5, it can hold, but it cannot actually hold 10 or 4. So this is actually the amount of the items that can actually be stored or hold by short-term memory. So a short-term memory is crucial for tasks such as problem solving and comprehension. This is actually the work of short-term memory. So we all have these types of memory. So for the short-term memory, it is associated with problem solving and comprehension. Then the long-term memory is divided into explicit, that is declarative, and implicit, that is non-declarative memory. So the explicit memory involves consensus recall of fact and event, while implicit memory relates to skills. So that is why in the case of long-term memory, we should understand that the explicit memory of the long-term memory is associated with consensus because of facts and events. Maybe you read something, you did something. So the recall those facts and events is associated with explicit memory. While for the implicit memory is related to skills. So that is why sometimes you see that some students are attending classes, they read, they understand, and you ask them questions, they recall and they give you answers, perfect answers. But if you teach them something based on maybe practical skills, they may not get that skills. So it means that in the case of that individual, there is a problem or there is a low implicit memory. And you can have someone that can have both. So see, look at this declarative memory. Declarative memory is a term used for long-term storage of fact and event. And it is one type of long-term memory. The other being procedural memory or the implicit memory. So look at it here. Declarative memory can be broken down into 2 types. We have episodic and semantic memory. Facts are stored in semantic memory. So information about experience is stored in episodic memory. So if you have experience on something, so it is actually episodic memory that store that. And if you have problems, sorry, if you have information that's associated with experiences, maybe you have actually involved yourself in doing something, like for example, you operate computers. So are you good in that? So that is the experience. So that is the episodic memory. So episodic memory is responsible for that. But facts are stored in semantic memory. That okay, you read biochemistry, and maybe there is a problem associated with something in biochemistry, then you talk. But the fact that you have, the fact that you read that particular part of biochemistry, especially if you involve yourself in argument. So the fact that you give out to defend yourself, the information that you have about the cause is stored in the semantic memory. So episodic memory, remembering what you and the love of your life said each other first time you met. So you see, it's an experience because you already have you love someone, and you had that memory that you loved her. So you have that experience. So remembering what you and the love of your life said to each other the first time you met. So you already had that experience. So you cannot actually, it's called episodic because when you now actually approach a lady, she tells you that she loves you and you tell her that you love her. It's the first experience. It's the first event that happened. But the next time when we met her and she tells you that she loves you, you already have that memory. So you had the experience, and that's why it's called episodic. In the case of semantic, being able to remember the part of brain involving in reading comprehension is a semantic. For example, I was able to remember that there are 5 classes of, let's say, or let me say, you are able to remember that there are 3 types of carbohydrate. That is semantic. That is the fact. Proteins are made up of amino acids. This is the semantic memory. So to be able to remembering all these things is what you call semantic. You had experience of operating computer before, and then you now come to operate computer. So episodic. So the long-term memory. So you see, we have declarative and non-declarative. So the non-declarative is implicit, while the explicit is associated with facts and events. And the explicit, which is declarative, is divided into semantic and episodic. So the long-term memory is supported by the brain's ability to create and strengthen neural connections. So the ability of the brains to create and strengthen neural connections is what leads to actually long-term memory. You read something and you remember it all the time. That is actually the long-term memory. It retains the information for long. In fact, sometimes for your lifetime. So neural connections and strengthening by the brains is what controls the long-term memory. So now memory processing. How do you process memory? So memory involves 2 key processes. There is encoding, and then there is storage, and then retrieval. Encoding transforms sensory information into a format suitable for storage in the brain. So the sensory information is encoded into a format that is suitable for the brain to store. And then the retrieval is the process of assessing and bringing stored memory into consciousness. That's whenever you want to talk about something or whenever you have a memory first. Now, you see, you hear, that is the sensory information. Then the brain encodes that sensory information into a format that can be stored. And when you asked, then you retrieve, which is actually the process of assessing and bringing what you have stored in your memories. So that is actually the memory processes involve three steps: encoding, storage, and the retrieval. So that is what I want us to understand. So processes of memory include encoding, storage, and retrieval. So what are the factors affecting memory? There are several factors that can influence memory performance, including attention, emotion, and context. If emotionally, if emotionally, or your attention is not there and you are not also interested in a uh, particular event, it may affect your memory. So the factors that affects the memory include attention, emotion, and context. If you actually take your attention, if you have, if you pay good attention and you are in good emotion, and also you like the context, it seriously affects your memory. So it may actually influence the memory performance. But if you didn't give attention and you are in bad emotion and you don't like the context, you will have a low memory toward that particular things that you are learning. Stress and anxiety can also impair memory function, while positive emotion often enhance it. So that is why I think in one of my videos that I made, I talk about the issue of different types of emotion. We have positive emotion and negative emotion. So negative emotion usually affects our memories, while positive emotion always enhance our memory. So when you are stressed, you are depressed, and you are under anxiety, it impairs with our memories. So that is why whenever we are going to read, let's try as much as possible to be in good memory. So the environment in which information is learned can also impact the recall ability later on. So the environment, that is why also environmental factor is one of the things that can also influence our memory. So if we find ourselves in a bad environment, it can affect the memory. But if you actually learn in a suitable environment, you will really enjoy it. But now, ladies and gentlemen, I now have a question. Okay, what are the memory techniques? Let's start with the memory techniques. There are various techniques that can enhance memory retention, such as mnemonic devices and visualization. Mnemonic devices, like even the current videos now that we are playing, that if you are listening to what I'm saying, if you are seeing what I'm saying, it enhances memory retention. So that is what I want us to understand. Spaced repetition, which involves reviewing information at increasing intervals, is highly effective. Like, I think at this point, I need to say something very important, ladies and gentlemen. There are ways that we can follow, convert a short-term memory into a long-term memory. Remember that I told you that a short-term memory just usually takes 20 to 30 seconds. So how do you actually convert the short-term memory into a long-term memory? And that is what we call memory consolidation. Memory consolidation. Memory consolidation. Memory consolidation. So when you said memory consolidation, it's actually a process that involves the conversion of short-term memory into a long-term memory. That is a process where a temporary labile information memories are transformed into more stable. That is a long-lasting ones through strengthening neural pathways. So if the neural pathways are weak, then you expect to have a short memory. A memory that is temporary and larval that can be easily be forgotten. But to strengthen your neural pathways through rehearsal and repetition, you rehearse, you repeat what you read. A short-term memory can be converted into a long-term memory. Sometimes there are some students that in just 2 minutes, they can read something and after some time they forget it. It's because the information stored there for some time. And look at actually most of what actually happened what with the student of our university. You see someone reads, or we call it last minute jacking. Just like few minutes to the exam, they'll start reading, or few hours to the exam, they'll be keep reading. So after they read, into the exams, they write it and they will forget it because it is actually on that short time and it is temporary and it is larval to be destroyed. And that is why it is the short term. But when you read from the beginning of the semester, you read today, you read in the next 2 hours, sorry, in the next 2 days, you read in the next 30 days, you read. So you keep reading and rehearsal. That is rehearsal and the repetition of the something. Then it will now become under your long-term memory. So the more so now what is the memory consolidation that we are talking about? The memory consolidation. The memory consolidation, it is actually the brain's process of transforming temporary fragile memories into permanent long-lasting one. That is memory consolidation. Because initially you have the memory, but it is not consolidated. So through rehearsal and repetition, then the fragile or temporary memories will now change into permanent. And this involves the strengthening the connections between neurons that store the memory. So if you strengthen the neural connections or the connections between the neurons that store the memory, then of course the memory will remain permanent. So how does it work? How do you actually make a short-term memory into a long-term memory? Number one, as I said, is through rehearsal and repetition. Number one, rehearsal. Rehearsal. Rehearsal and repetition. Repetition. That is number one. So through rehearsal and repetition. And then number two is space memory. Space memory. So through space memory, it is also very important to enhance memory consolidation. A space memory is actually spacing out learning over time is more effective than cramming. Spacing out learning over time is more effective than cram. So that is the space memory. And the meaningful association. Meaningful association. And let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, wallahi, I can tell you these things really work. It really works. The rehearsal and the repetition, the space memory, and then the last one is meaningful association. Meaningful association. What do you mean with meaningful association? If you now read something now, and you remember that you read something before, so try to connect them. Will they be connected? So if you can be able to do that, I'm telling you, you will not have problem. You will definitely develop that memory into consolidated one. So that is how it's actually happening. Okay, now we now read carbohydrate. Okay, now understand. Okay, carbohydrate produce energy. So what about protein? We now read, okay, protein also provide energy. So now compare, associate them. That okay, so how many ATP are produced by carbohydrates? How many ATP are produced by the protein? Then you connect them, you associate them. And from there, whenever you remember that carbohydrate is producing energy, then you will also remember that proteins also did the same. So that's meaningful association. So what are the regions of brain that are associated with this memory conversion? Number one, you have hippocampus. Hippocampus plays a crucial role in forming new memories, especially those that are declarative. Remember, I told you that we have two types of memory, declarative and non-declarative, explicit and implicit. So the explicit or the declarative memory is associated with facts and events. Facts and events. And if you can, sorry, events like this, events. And don't forget that I told you that even the declarative is divided into two. We have semantic and we have episodic. So creating association between new information and the existing knowledge can also boost recall. So you see, this is what you call meaningful association. So spaced repetition, which involves reviewing information at increasing intervals, is highly effective. That, okay, you read now, then after sometimes you go back and review that information. Then another time you also go back and review that information. Is it the same thing or does it change? Especially in science, things are changing. So this is actually what you call spaced repetition. And mnemonic devices, like if you can use radio, or you can use video, or you can use like this normal video that we do in YouTube, it will actually enhances your memory. So this is actually how to combat. These are the techniques that are involved in conversion of short-term memory into long-term memory. Rehearsal and repetition, space repetition, and creating association. That is the meaningful association. And the major regions of the brain that actually have in doing this is hippocampus, which actually plays a crucial role in forming new memories, especially those that are declarative. So hippocampus, which is actually one of the important part of the brain that is associated with the declarative facts. So ladies and gentlemen, please get that. And then the next thing is, of course, the cerebral cortex. So when you say cerebral cortex, it is also, it is a long-term memories. Long-term memories are ultimately stored in different regions of the cerebral cortex, depending on the type of memory. Is it a visual memory? Visual memory? Is it auditory? So the long-term memories are stored in the cerebral cortex. So hippocampus and cerebral cortex, you shouldn't forget about this, ladies and gentlemen. So then I think what are also other strategies that can also enhance memory consolidation? Active retrieval. That is, regularly test yourself on the material to strengthen memory retrieval pathways. That is, doing exams, doing tests, asking yourself, getting past question paper, answer them by yourself. That is the active retrieval. That is the active retrieval. Sleep. Adequate sleep. Adequate sleep. Adequate sleep is crucial for memory consolidation. Because if you don't sleep very well, it may be very difficult for you to actually have a very good memory, as it allows the brain to process and store information. So if you sleep very well, it's actually during sleeping that your brain will process and store information, and also healthy lifestyle. Maintaining a healthy lifestyle, like for example, exercises, balanced diet, stress management, can also positively impact memory function. You see, ladies and gentlemen, all this information, they are very important. That is why sometimes I used to tell students they are dull because they want to be dull. Do you think that doing TTV It's a solution? No, because if you do TDB, the information cannot be processed and will not be stored. Healthy lifestyle, if you are not doing physical activities, you don't eat enough food, and you don't actually manage your stress is also another thing. How do you manage stress? There are different ways of managing stress. You can manage stress by watching movies. You can manage stress by reciting Bible or Quran as a Muslim. There are people that when they recite Quran, their stress goes down. Are you in a relationship with your boyfriend or girlfriend, with your wife? Will that actually stress you? Yeah, this is actually a process of stress management. So all this can positively impact your memory. Like, for example, if you repeatedly practice a skill or study a concept, the neural pathways involved become stronger, making it easier to recall and perform the skill or remember the concept in the future. This is the first time I'm teaching memory techniques. So if I do it next time, if I'm going to do it also next time, and I keep doing it repeatedly, I'm telling you, the neural networks that are associated or the neural pathways that are associated with that memory will be much more stronger. What are the memory disorders? The memory disorders include amnesia, that is a complete loss of memory. Alzheimer's disease can also significantly impact cognitive function. So amnesia and Alzheimer's disease, they are associated with affecting our cognitive function. Amnesia can result from brain injury, trauma, or psychological factors affecting memory retrieval. And Alzheimer's disease is a progressive neurodegenerative disorder that can lead to severe memory loss. So this is actually some of the major two disorders that is associated with memory. So what are the future of memory research? Ongoing research is exploring the mechanisms of memory formation and retrieval at the cellular level. So advances in technology such as brain-computer interface might offer new insight into memory. So understanding memory better can lead to improved treatment for memory-related conditions. So ladies and gentlemen, this is where I'm going to stop. I hope this video will be very interesting to all of you. See you next time and bye-bye.